What's going on, everyone? This is Jordan Nahisi, one of your hosts and producers, and welcome to the Culture 316 podcast. As you can see, I'm by myself today, but it's going to be a good show. We're going to have a lot of fun, as always. If you are watching via YouTube or Facebook or wherever you visually stream your podcast, be sure to like, to comment, and to subscribe. If you are listening via Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to give it a 5 stars. Before we get into anything, I really just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you. Some people may not be aware, some people may be aware, but on YouTube, one of our segments from last episode blew up. Not necessarily blew up, but it currently is our highest view segment on the page, and it was our debate about AJ Styles, if he is the greatest wrestler of this generation. A lot of you guys came out and supported, and a lot of you guys showed your love and showed your support. And because of that, we went from about 480 subscribers a couple weeks ago to now 750. Our benchmark and our goal is 1,000 by the end of the year, and it looks like that we're well on our way. And so we wanted to say thank you so much for the support. Thank you and welcome to our new followers and our new family. And as you can also see, I'm in my parents' apartment. We are not in the studio. And to be honest, the studio was really because we wanted to have our first in-person episode for the season premiere. Ideally, we would love to be there for every show. We love that space. My Friend's Basement is an amazing podcast space in Brooklyn, New York. They're available on Peerspace if you want to check them out. But a lot of people complimented on the setup and the way that we were running things. And yeah, it was high end. It was also expensive. So we want to get to a place where we're fully monetized as a collective, as a podcast, so that we can always give you guys the best quality of content possible. And so if you like what you see, if you think another person will like what they see when they listen and they watch the Culture 316 podcast, like, comment, share, and subscribe. It is free 99, and it helps us get closer to our goal, which allows us to invest in things that create the best quality podcasts and content for you guys at home. So that's all that I really had to say. But thank you and welcome to our new visitors. We are so glad that you're here. And we have a lot of exciting things coming this season. But we're going to get started right away. So first thing is first. During AEW Double or Nothing, we saw the return of Maxwell Jacob Freeman. Obviously, the last time we saw him was being defeated for the AEW World Championship, where I believe he lost to Samoa Joe. And then he was also the victim of an assault by who was revealed to be the Devil, a.k.a. Adam Cole. Upon his return to AEW, we saw him come out after an Adam Cole segment, which was immediately following a AEW International Championship match. Adam Cole came out, cut a promo. We saw MJF come out, very 2002 Triple H coded with the leather jacket, but he had a little bit of the Burberry print on there, and he called himself the Wolf of Wrestling, and that he's not leaving AEW. So the rumors are true. MJF is not going to WWE. There is no bidding war of 2024. He is staying with All Elite Wrestling. And honestly, I'm relieved. MJF has grown into being one of my favorite performers in All Elite Wrestling. And on top of that, I think that he is a bona fide homegrown star, right? We look at some of the matches and some of the moments that he's been able to have over these past 4 to 5 years, and they have stood out, not just in AEW, but across all of the industry. He's had stuff against CM Punk, stuff against Jack Perry, stuff against Darby Allin, and they've all been memorable. And so to see MJF kind of return in this, I guess, more casual, stripped down way, the suit is gone. We see kind of elements of the suit, but we don't see the shirt and tie. We don't see the tailor-made suits. It's very jeans, leather vests, leather jackets. And I love this new return, and I love this new era of MJF. It gives us a more casual side of him, and I think it just makes him more beloved by the audience. But yeah, man, I think that MJF is going to be super valuable to AEW going forward. I feel like for a very, not a long time, but I feel like there was a point in time in AEW where they were suffering because there wasn't as much of a prominent star power. And I believe that MJF adds depth to the return of MJF adds depth to the roster. And I believe that it adds star power to the roster. And so I think that just MJF being back is just such a great thing. And I'm so glad and I'm so happy. But I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. How do you guys feel about the return of Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF? Leave your comments below. We're going to get into the next topic. Okay, so in addition to MJF returning, it says that Alicia Tout is also all elite. The former MLW personality is now, I believe, a member of the AEW roster. This is amazing. This is huge. Alicia Tout is a phenomenal on-screen talent. She served MLW for many, many years. I also believe that she was an on-screen character. So the fact that AEW was able to bring on someone who has such versatility on screen, I think is going to be a huge, huge plus for them. I think it's great that they're doing all of this right now. It just feels like AEW is kind of like getting a second win. I feel like they got a little bit of the win taken out of them when CM Punk left. And so I'm glad that they're kind of hitting their second win a little bit. I think this is a super good acquisition. I think this is super good for them. And yeah, I'm very, very eager to see how Alicia does in this new space and in this new role. But let me know what you guys think about Alicia Tout joining the AEW roster. But once again, we're moving on. As you can tell, this show is going to probably go pretty fast. Mo is not here right now. She's dealing with a lot, but we know this is going to come back better than ever. So we're moving on because it seems like there has been another forbidden door that has been struck down. And that forbidden door is WWE and TNA. Now, this became apparent because we saw the TNA Knockouts champion Jordynne Grace appear on WWE NXT. Not only did she appear on WWE NXT, she is also set to challenge Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship this week at WWE NXT Battleground in Las Vegas at the UFC Apex. I think that this is huge, but I think this is a testament to a couple of things. Number one, TNA over the past 3 to 4 years has had the best comeback story in professional wrestling, in my opinion. Hold on, y'all. That's my fiance. Hold on. Baby, I'll call you back. So I think that TNA has had the best comeback story of any company in professional wrestling over the past 3 to 4 years. I think that they were at one point where you couldn't even pay somebody to see them, and now they're working with WWE. But I think that part of it is because TNA has been consistently good. I've talked about this on this show. TNA wrestling has been consistently good for the past 3 to 4 years. And a lot of the things that we complain about in all these other major wrestling companies, TNA has always been solid in, whether it's the diversity in the women's division, in the knockouts division, I should say. I mean, if we look at that roster, you have Giselle Shaw, you have Jordynne Grace. At one point, you had Deonna Purrazzo, right? You have Killer Kelly. You have a lot of great women over there on that roster. Not only do you have a great main event scene in the women's roster, you also have a great tag team division. They have a knockouts tag team division. And I feel like another thing that we've always complained about has been the way that WWE has booked the women's tag team championships. But now, if you look at TNA, they are booking them really, really, really well. And if we look at on the men's side, they have always had a pretty strong main event scene, a lot of solid guys over there. And then obviously they have the X division. Speaking of, I think that Mustafa Ali is doing some fantastic work that's consistently being overlooked, and I don't know why. Moose has been a standout guy for them for years, and he has cultivated himself into a main event performer and an A-plus player. Now with the system, you have Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers, a really good faction, and I didn't think that it would work, but it's working. And so when you look at TNA and over the kind of the spectrum of TNA, you see that team has been working to put forth an exceptional on-screen product that you can get guys that you can put on any TV show at any point in time and they'll work. Jordan Grace has been a history maker in TNA wrestling. I think she was the first ever TNA digital media champion, which is a gender neutral championship. Anybody can compete for it, and she was the first champion there. And then obviously she's been a 2-time or multiple time knockouts champion there. So the fact that Jordan Grace is now appearing in NXT, it's no surprise to me. If I were to have a women's division and Jordan Grace was on my roster and Jordan Grace was my champion, I would 100% be over the moon to have her represent me in the largest wrestling company in the world. Not to mention that she's already had a little bit of a WWE history because of her appearance in the Royal Rumble. And her competing for the NXT Women's Championship is actually perfect. Roxanne kind of made a point on screen. She's kind of been through everyone. And regardless of if Jordan Grace wins that championship or not, having a competitor of that caliber challenge for the championship only does wonders for the championship. Jordan Grace is a main event player. She's a main event performer. And I believe that this is great exposure for her. I believe this is great exposure for TNA. And another thing, speaking of that, the fact that we're seeing the TNA Knockouts Championship being featured prominently on an NXT product shows that NXT is willing to do business. I remember years ago when AEW began working with other companies, there was a reporter that asked Triple H if they would be willing to work with other companies. And, they said they're open for business. It just has to make sense. And when I look at what's happening here, this is something that just feels like it makes sense, right? I think it's equally beneficial for both parties. You have Jordan Grace, the TNA Knockouts champion, on a WWE product. And I think that it's good exposure for TNA. I think that it spices up the on-screen product for WWE NXT. And I think that everybody just wins all around. But I'm really, really excited about this match on Sunday. And I'm really, really eager to see what happens because now we don't really know what happens. If Roxanne is correct and she's gone through everybody, do we see Jordan Grace take the NXT Women's Championship the NXT Women's Championship? Do we see it being taken to TNA Impact? I think that makes for a very, very interesting dynamic. Also, we saw some NXT women garner some interest in the TNA Knockouts title. So one can only imagine that we're going to see some NXT women on TNA as well. So I'm really, really excited for what's to come. But how do you guys feel about Jordan Grace being on NXT? I think it's really, really exciting and fun. But let me know in the comments below, and we're going to be moving on. So in addition to this TNA WWE crossover, seems like we have something very, very interesting going on with one Mr. Ethan Page. Now, the last time we heard from him, he was an AEW superstar. I think the last match he had was for the world title in Canada. If I'm not mistaken, y'all can check me if I'm wrong. He shows up to NXT. Apparently, he's behind the attacks of multiple members of Metaphor, and then he attacks Trick Williams. Not only does he do all these things, he challenges Trick Williams for the NXT Championship for once again this Sunday at NXT Battleground. I think this is exciting. Ethan Page is someone who I have always had in a high regard. I believe that he's been a good in-ring performer. I believe that he is good on the mic. I think he's great on the mic. I think he has a lot of charisma. I think that he has a lot of poise and a lot of demeanor. And I feel like he just didn't get that opportunity in AEW. I feel like there were a couple times, like I think when they did the Men of the Year, that faction with Scorpio Sky, I think they had something there. But I feel like Ethan Page should have had a TNT championship run. I feel like he could have been an international champion. I think he could have even eventually been the world champion. But, I feel like I don't think it was a matter of him being underutilized as much as it was there were so many other talents in AEW at that time that it's like there were so many things that they were already putting their focus on. And because of that, I feel like they just dropped the ball with Ethan Page significantly. So I'm glad that he's in NXT. I feel like the story in which he has been placed in, as far as like, oh, well, I'm not signed to an NXT contract, just makes it very interesting. And I love the fact that he's already being inserted into the main event championship picture, because he's a main event guy, in my opinion. When it comes to NXT, Ethan Page is a main event guy. To be honest, I feel like he could be a main event guy on the main roster as well. He just has that charisma and that it factor. So I'm very, very excited about that as well. But yeah, I want to know how everybody feels about NXT signing Ethan Page, all ego Ethan Page. I mean, this is not the first time they've gotten a AEW talent. I mean, they got Shawn Spears as Shawn Spears, not Ty Dillinger, which was interesting to say the least. But how do you guys feel about Ethan Page joining NXT? Let me know in the comments below. But we're going to be moving on. In a recent interview, Great-O-Khan was talking about the mass exodus of talent from New Japan Pro Wrestling. And for those of you who are unaware, we've seen a lot of top talents leave New Japan Pro Wrestling. Obviously, Kazuchika Okada and Will Ospreay left for AEW. We know that Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa are in the WWE as a part of this revitalized bloodline storyline. And so we see a lot of the guys who have made their name in Japan leave to go to American-based wrestling promotions who have a very, very strong financial backing, right? Have a strong financial backing. Now, in this interview, I hope I'm not wrong, it says, Great-O-Khan says that the New Japan exodus will continue until the financial strength is increased. I think that that's very, very telling. That a company that, and Great-O-Khan is not a scrub. He is another guy in New Japan who is important. And I think that this is just a very, very telling sign of where New Japan is. There's a lot of guys who were in New Japan who were like, I'm not leaving New Japan. And now that they are, and I think that it's a sign of something. In my opinion, I feel like New Japan during the Okada, Omega, Ospreay era, they did not make a successful new up-and-coming star the way that they kind of groomed Omega to be when AJ was kind of in the process of transitioning to WWE. I feel like we got Ospreay, but after that, they didn't really have anybody else, and now the shoes are empty, and not a lot of people can fill those shoes as far as being a top guy. And I feel like the reason why there is a mass exodus and the reason why there is, a financial, a little bit of a downfall there is because of the lack of a profitable top guy. When we look at the past 10 years of New Japan Pro Wrestling, we can talk about Okada, we can talk about Kenny Omega, we could talk about AJ Styles, we could talk about Finn Balor, we could talk about the success of the Bullet Club, which in my opinion is the most influential faction in the past 25 years as it pertains to wrestling. Them and the Bloodline to me are 1A and 1B. But somewhere along the line, we never got a chance to see a new, freshly developed, homegrown star. Or I should say, they weren't able to do that, or they weren't able to successfully get somebody else from a different company who can fill those shoes and can grow with New Japan. Everybody just kind of went to America, and rightfully so, right? I mean, the schedule is you're either getting more money with a less, let me rephrase that. You're either getting more money with a less hectic schedule, or you're getting more money with a heavier schedule. Either way, you go to WWE, you go to AEW, there's a very large likelihood that you're probably going to get more money. And I feel like that's where we're at. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I feel like a lot of people forget that these pro wrestlers are human beings, that they have families, that they have dreams and goals and aspirations outside of wrestling. And in order for you to reach those goals and aspirations and to meet those needs, you need money. You know what I'm saying? Nobody trying to be pile driven for the rest of their life on the hardest mat in the world, getting stiff kicked and heavily concussed and all that strong style, and you're not getting paid what you can be getting paid if you were to just go to another company. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's the thing with New Japan, and I'm eager to see what happens. But I want to know what you guys think. How can New Japan Pro Wrestling rise to prominence again? How can New Japan Pro Wrestling be the company that we once knew and once loved and had the 5-star matches and the exciting storylines and the exciting young stars? I need to know from y'all. How can New Japan Pro Wrestling get back to where they are? But we're going to be moving on. So, one of the things that I've been noticing, and y'all can check me if I'm wrong, the WWE stories, they're getting so much better. And I feel like we're starting to really see that be played out with this Liv Morgan revenge tour, right? This idea of, I'm going to take your title, I'm going to take your spotlight. And now we're seeing things get spicy with Dominic Mysterio. On one episode of Raw, we saw Liv Morgan kiss Dominic Mysterio at the end of the show. On the latest episode of Raw, we saw Liv flirting with Dom trying to refute it. And it was even one point where Dom was smiling a little bit. And I think that these stories are being so well done because it is rewarding the audience who was here last year, right? We saw, not last year, but, a couple years prior to the Judgment Day, we saw Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan team up, right? And we saw where Rhea betrayed Liv. And now we're seeing Liv come back on this revenge tour, and it just makes sense. And it feels great as a fan because it feels like my watching and my viewership and my fandom was not in vain. And it all just makes sense, right? She has the World Women's Championship. She beat Becky Lynch, forced her into an early retirement, and Becky's contract status being what it is, because it's left to the unknown, it's like, oh, did Liv really put Becky out? And then now with the whole Dominic Mysterio thing, here's the reason why the Dominic Mysterio thing is so captivating and cool. Because nobody in this situation looks weak. And in fact, a lot of characters are being enhanced. Because as Liv continues to tamper with Dom continues to gain more heat. He continues to gain more heat. And now because we see him with Rhea, him with Liv, two women who the WWE universe considers to be beautiful, attractive women, he's being portrayed as this desirable man, this desirable figure for one reason or another. You know what I mean? Like he has things and people that are attracted to him. It positions him to be desirable. And it kind of positions him to be kind of this Playboy-esque figure, which I think is also a play on what Eddie Guerrero used to be, right? When he was dealing with China and, sometimes he got caught up, it gave this perception that Eddie Guerrero was a desirable man. And we're now kind of seeing a modern iteration of that when it comes to Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. Every time Liv Morgan tampers with Dominic Mysterio, it only shows how Liv Morgan, how petty she is, and how not desperate, but how adamant she is for getting this revenge on Rhea, and how adamant she is by driving this wedge between Judgment Day, because it's not just a matter of flirting with Dom in and of itself. It's the fact that there are people in the Judgment Day who disagree with this idea of Liv Morgan and Dominic being close, because they know the relationship that Dominic and Rhea have. So now, because of this, you have a sense of tension within the faction. And then on the other side of it, the longer that Rhea Ripley stays out, the more you're thinking like, yo, when this woman comes back, she's smoking her. She's smoking her bad. And I think that part of the reason why this storyline is so prominent and so good is because it plays to the strength of everyone, and it plays to the sub-narratives within the larger narrative, right? The tension in the Judgment Day that is going to cause this inevitable split. This Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley rift that has been brewing for years. And you can even make the argument that this is contributing to the individual identity of Dominic Mysterio, right? Him being with his father was the only time he was really associated with the Mysterio name, and that was very, very brief. But so many dramatic things have happened since then that you cannot just say Dominic is Ray's kid, because there's so many things that have happened separate and apart from him that allows him to gain and to develop his own identity. And I think that that's another just a big thing that I'm a fan of. Another thing that I wanted to kind of touch on was this Chad Gable story. This Chad Gable, Alpha Academy, Otis and Tozawa and Maxine story, this idea that Chad Gable is so obsessed with the Intercontinental Championship and winning it that he is willing to turn into someone who he never intended to be. And now he is projecting his failures onto Otis and Tozawa and expecting things from them that he has not fulfilled himself. And then seeing how his interactions with Otis are essentially kind of reassigning this love, this long lost love for Otis. We haven't seen this love for Otis since his Money in the Bank tenure and since his tenure with Mandy Rose. And it seems like we're getting that, and that's coming back. Otis is such a lovable figure. He's always been a lovable figure. When he was with Heavy Machinery, he was a lovable figure. But now we're seeing that same love return back to him. And we're seeing it in the form of the storyline between Chad Gable and Sami Zayn. And once again, multiple things are at play, right? We saw Chad Gable lose to Sami Zayn in Montreal, right? Sami wins in his hometown. When Chad challenged for the Intercontinental title before that against Gunter, Chad lost in his hometown. That's a form, and now we're seeing this frustration that comes from a form of projection, right? And then while we have this interaction between Chad and Sami, we have this interaction between Chad and Otis, Chad and Maxine, Chad and Tozawa. And now we're having some sub-narratives within there because now we're seeing the redevelopment of Otis as Otis. And then we're also seeing the possible formation of an Alpha Academy 2.0 with Chad Gable and Alpha and the Creed brothers. I feel like everybody compares Chad Gable to Kurt Angle, and rightfully so. They're very, very, very similar. However, I feel like this idea that Chad Gable and the Creed brothers can be the new Team Angle, I feel like that's spot on. And I even think that they can even go a little bit further, because I feel like the thing that Team Angle never had was the extensive run and the ability to grow together. We saw Kurt as a mentor to Shelton and Charlie. But I feel like because Chad is young and the Creed brothers are young, Chad could still be a mentor, but we can really see these guys grow together as a unit. And I think that that's super, super exciting. But I just want to say, WWE stories have been significantly better because of the precedent that the Bloodline set. The Bloodline set a precedent and a trend in which you have to pay attention to the program. You have to pay attention to the little details and the little nuances that happen in the background, that happen in this corner, that happen, oh, why did she leave that thing in this ring? Oh, why did she give this person this look? We're even starting to see commentary around Jade and Bianca. And it follows in the vein of what we saw with the Bloodline. This idea that you need to be watching every week, because if you don't, you're going to miss something. And now the Bloodline, and specifically Roman Reigns, has created a trend in which you have to pay attention to the product in order to, one, understand it, and two, be able to feel rewarded when there is a payoff at the end, because you saw the little thing over here and the little thing over there, and you were like, I knew it. We got to thank the Bloodline because of all of this that's happening right now with Liv Morgan and the Revenge Tour, along with the Judgment Day here. And then we have Chad Gable and Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental title over there. And we're getting glimpses a little bit of Jade and Bianca. It is because of Roman Reigns and the Bloodline that Raw has become must-see TV, because it set a precedent where if you want to be on this program, you have to create a story where the fans have to watch. They have to see what's going on unless they're going to be left behind. But I want to know how y'all feel about these WWE programs. Clearly, I'm very, very passionate about it. I want to know what y'all feel about these WWE programs and the storylines that are going into it, because I think it's just phenomenal. We're moving on. This Sunday at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, we have NXT Battleground. There's a lot of cool, exciting things that are set for this program, including a 6-pack ladder match for the new NXT Women's North American Championship. It feels like NXT is the hottest product in WWE. It feels like it's one of the hottest products in professional wrestling, along with the Seeing Sexy Red on NXT. She will also be the host for NXT Battleground, and I'm super, super excited about that. But we have a very, very stacked card with a lot of cool matches, and I think that it plays a lot into the strengths of a lot of these guys. So let's get underway. We're going to start with the NXT Tag Team Championships. Nathan Frazier and Axiom versus the OC. Now, if you've been following this storyline with AJ Styles, you've noticed that he kind of ostracized Michin and the OC because they weren't picking up their slack. AJ has had enough of playing mediocre, playing nice guy, and he wants to be back at the top. And so once he felt like the OC was not reaching that level, he kind of separated him or distanced himself away from the group. This is a great way for the OC in the context of this story to prove to AJ, hey, we're still those guys. We're still the former IWGP World Tag Team Champions, and we are top guys. In addition to that, we've seen some tensions between Nathan Frazier and Axiom here and there. So I'm going to go with OC. I think the OC is going to win, and they're going to be the new NXT Tag Team Champions. Next, we have Shayna Baszler versus Lola Vice. Two people who are very, very trained and skilled at martial arts. And because of that, we're getting an NXT Underground match. I love the fact that they brought this concept back. I love the fact that they are doing something with this because it was a genius concept on Raw. It just was for the wrong audience. Underground is very MMA based. It's very something that's going to play really, really well with this UFC Apex environment. But I'm going to go Lola Vice. Shayna Baszler is a main event woman. She's a main eventer. I believe that she should be a World Women's Champion or a WWE Women's Champion. And I believe that Lola is going to go over Shayna because I feel like Lola is one of the hottest up-and-coming stars in the women's division. So I'm going to go with Lola Vice on this one. Next match we have for the NXT North American Champion. We have Obafemi versus Wesley versus Joe Coffey. On one end, you have Wesley kind of coming back and trying to complete his story from being out with that very, very gruesome injury. On the other end, you have Obafemi, who, in my opinion, is one of the most dominant NXT North American champions we've ever had and that we've ever seen. I love his work. I love his stature. I love his build. I love his presence. He has an aura to him that feels very, very tangible. And I'm a fan of his work. And then you have Joe Coffey, who's just Joe Coffey. Like, he's the man. I love Joe Coffey. I love that group, Gallus. Ooh, shout out to them. I met them at Mania 35. Like, Joe Coffey's the man. He's a phenomenal in-ring performer, big, agile, athletic. He's my type of guy. But I'm trying to figure out how long they want this Wesley comeback story to be. Because this is a triple threat match, I can see Obafemi pinning Joe Coffey after Wesley hits Joe Coffey with a finishing move. I feel like they're going to really drag out this Wesley kind of comeback story. And I think that Wesley is going to be the North American champion again, but not now, because I think that Obafemi has now and he has next. So I'm going to go with Obafemi as the winner of that match. And next, we have the 6-woman tag match. I mean, not the tag match, the 6-pack ladder match challenge for the NXT Women's North American Championship. Now, the reason why I love this so much, NXT doesn't forget. NXT doesn't forget, and NXT always rewards its fans, because how was the first ever men's NXT Women's Championship crown? In a 6-man ladder match featuring Adam Cole, EC3, Ricochet, and others. And for this match, we have a good mix of talent of seasoned vets in NXT, a main roster women in WWE, and some up-and-coming talent. We have Sol Ruka, we have Lash Legend, we have Fallon Henley, we have Jada Parker, we have Michin, and we have Kalani Jordan. Honestly, this is difficult, but I think Jada Parker is the hottest in the game right now. First of all, Jada's promo against Michin, sis said, Michin, this ain't black and I know you was in NXT, but this ain't black and gold. And if you get near my title, I'm turning you black and blue. That was a bar. Stop playing with him. I'm going to go with Jada Parker. Jada got my vote for that match. I think that she's going to be the first ever women's North American champion. And the next match is the NXT Women's Championship match. Roxanne Perez versus Jordynne Grace. This may be a little bit of a wild card. I believe that because that NXT really wants to establish this relationship with TNA. Don't be surprised if Jordynne Grace wins. I feel like this is one of those matches where everybody expects Roxanne to win. But think about it like this. Roxanne has history in TNA. I feel like we can possibly see Jordynne Grace win the NXT Women's Championship, be a double champion, have Roxanne go to TNA, start some stuff over there, win the title back. I think it'll be a good moment. It shows that NXT is willing to work with TNA and cross-brand as much as possible. So I'm going to go with Jordynne Grace on that one. And then last but not least, we have Trick Williams versus Ethan Page for the NXT Championship. I'm going to go with Trick Williams. I love Ethan Page. I think that he is the future of WWE if they just so happen to keep him, if he is in a long-term contract. But I feel like this is a unique adversary for Ethan Page, and I feel like this is going to cement him as one of those guys, as one of the Adam Coles, as one of the I'm trying to figure out another name, as one of the Finn Balor's. I feel like in order for Trick to be in that class, he has to go up against somebody legit. And I feel like Ethan Page is legit. I feel like all of his challengers have been legit, but I feel like it poses a new threat. And if he beats him, it puts him over. So I'm going to go with Trick Williams. And that concludes my predictions for this year's NXT Battleground, live from Vegas, hosted by Sexy Red. If my predictions was off, let me know in the comments below about your predictions for NXT Battleground. Thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. It was a great episode per usual. Hopefully Mo will be with me next time. If not, somebody else will. But thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.